We've spent a lot of time talking about the mechanics of the action potential. But what's the really exciting thing about the simplicity of this mechanism of signaling? It's that there's so many ways to mess it up. Thankfully for neuroscience, though not necessarily for humankind or the other members of the animal kingdom, nature has evolved an extremely thorough array of tools targeting nearly every part of the signaling mechanism. Let's take a field trip and look at just one of nature's methods of disrupting neuronal signaling, the neurotoxin TTX. We're here at the New England Aquarium with curator of fishes Stephen Bailey to take a deeper dive into neuronal signaling. Now, in the ocean, a lot of creatures have evolved really amazing ways to kill us and attack our nervous systems. In this tank here, we have some examples. So can you tell us a little bit about what kind of neurotoxic fishes we have?
I think most folks refer to puffers being the inflatable, lack of spined versions of that bigger group, the Tetrodontiformes, and we do have an example in the exhibit of that. We have Sporoides testudineus, which goes by a couple of common names, the checkered puffer or the red-eyed puffer, and we have a single specimen that is a young specimen. It is believed that that animal and its ovaries, its liver, possibly its intestines, harbor some of the TTX toxin.
So can these animals use this as an offensive weapon, or is it purely defensive?
Purely defensive, and in fact, this group of animals has a series of defenses, and this is really one of the last resorts. Because it is a passive defense, it usually involves the sacrificing of one's life. It's something of an altruistic exercise, because if a predator eats one of the group, and it's a learning experience, potentially then it won't eat others that look the same. Mm-hmm. So it's really the last in a line of defenses.
So do humans ever eat these fish?
Humans apparently love to eat these fishes, these puffer fishes, of which there are 120 different species of 19 different genera. I don't know that it happens so much in this country, but certainly in the Far East it's considered a delicacy and has been prepared for consumption for centuries now. But it has to be done very carefully. What you're looking for is primarily the musculature, which in some species will contain varying amounts of this toxin. And when you consume that musculature, you'll get tingling about the mouth, lips, tongue, and maybe even some intoxication resembling alcohol. If it's prepared improperly, you'll get quite a buzz, but that will very likely result in death.
And so how would somebody die if they were to eat this fish?
The toxin, and we're talking about TTX, but there are potentially other toxins involved. TTX is a neuroinhibitor blocking the sodium pathway. So muscle paralysis, and most importantly, the diaphragm, which is really important in the breathing process. If that ceases to function, you'll just stop breathing, and that's not a good thing for most humans.
Have you ever tried it?
I have to admit, no, I have not.
Are you interested in it?
I am interested, but I would want a full resume on the guy preparing that meal for me, yes.
So how does the TTX get into the fish, and why doesn't it hurt the fish?
This is one of those classic cases of you are what you eat. So the puffer, amongst its prey items, are filter-feeding shellfish. They eat a wide variety of things, snails. They're quite omnivorous, in fact. But
so toxic garbage dump for the ocean.
Well, yeah, I suppose so, and it's just being passed on up the chain. So the bacteria, which are actually responsible for the toxin, are being ingested by the filter-feeding invertebrates, clams or mussels. Those are then being eaten by fish, and then the toxin is being stored or sequestered in certain tissues within the fish's body. Really doesn't cause any harm to the animal for two reasons. One, it's not widely circulating in the body, and a toxin is a toxin to some things, but not necessarily others. So the pufferfish has probably been living with this organism, this toxin, eating the organisms that it has, living with the toxin, and probably doesn't suffer any ill effects.
So I actually went and tried to find a restaurant that would serve me fugu, and it turns out there are some couple dozen restaurants in the U.S. that are actually licensed to serve fugu, but unfortunately you can't see it being butchered here in the U.S. The law requires that it be butchered in Japan, carefully washed, then frozen and shipped. So we're still looking for a restaurant where we can serve it, but maybe you guys can spare.
We'll see what we can. In the name of science, we'll see how this experiment plays itself out.
Sounds good, sounds good. We have you on film saying that you'll allow me to eat your fish.
Surprisingly, a number of the species that we have on exhibit are animals that we will get from commercial fishermen. You can get them in a fish market, depending on the sophistication of the fish market. So quite often, an animal that we have on exhibit is readily available if you know where to look for it, and you could purchase it.
So are there any species of puffer that live around here?
Yes, the northern puffer. It's an animal that we have on exhibit right over in our shorebird exhibit.
Let's take a look.
Okay. So this is In on the Wind, which is our depiction of the Boston Harbor Islands, primarily focusing visitors' attention on the shorebird species. But lo and behold, in the exhibit and up in the rear is the northern puffer coming around that rock. Can get to be, at least in these waters, 5 or 6 inches. I believe that they can be as much as 8 or 9 inches in the more southerly extremes of their range.
There's no reports of people dying from eating these.
Not that I know of, but if you learn of someone, it would make a terrific interpretive element on an exhibit, so please let me know.
We'll get to work on that.